You know what's funny? We spend so much of our lives trying to get people to see us, to understand us, to validate us, to clap for us. We think if we talk louder, explain harder, prove ourselves over and over again, then maybe we'll finally be understood. But let me tell you something. The most powerful shift in your life begins the moment you stop chasing noise and start focusing on yourself in silence. There's a quiet kind of strength that comes from not explaining yourself anymore. It's that energy, that excellence isn't weakness, it's strategy. Most people misunderstand silence. They think staying quiet means surrender, that not reacting means you were afraid, or that keeping to yourself means you don't have a voice. But in truth, silence is one of the most powerful tools you have when you're building yourself, because silence is not about shutting down. It's about tuning in. When you choose silence intentionally, you're not running away from noise. You're choosing where to place your focus. You're deciding that not everything deserves your energy, your explanation, or your emotional reaction. You're saying, I have nothing to prove. I'm working on something bigger than your opinion. That's power. When you start understanding silence as strategy, you realize that reacting to every little thing around you is what drains your energy. The truth is, most of what people say or think about you has nothing to do with you. They're just projecting their fears, their insecurities, and their need to control. When you engage with every comment, every criticism, every distraction, you lose momentum. You give your focus to people who haven't earned it. But when you stay silent, you stay centered. You don't get pulled into the noise. You stay in control of your emotions, and that's when your power begins to grow. Because the moment you stop explaining yourself to everyone, you begin explaining yourself to yourself. You start asking, what do I really want? What am I building for myself? Silence gives you clarity. It creates space for reflection, for growth, and for understanding what truly matters. In silence, you begin to hear your own thoughts clearly without the echo of other people's opinions drowning them out. You start realizing how much of your life was lived reacting to others instead of creating for yourself. And once you recognize that, you begin to rebuild your life with purpose. You stop defending your dreams and start living them. You stop proving your worth and start valuing it. When you embrace silence, you also start mastering patience. You understand that not every success has to be announced, not every plan has to be shared, and not every move has to be visible. Real growth happens quietly. The tree doesn't make noise when it grows roots, but that's the most important part of its strength. The same goes for you. When you work in silence, people may not see your progress at first, but one day your results will speak for themselves. The ones who doubted you will hear that silence roar through your success. Silence also protects your peace. In a world that glorifies constant noise, posting, talking, explaining, it takes real courage to say nothing and just work. You begin to realize that peace is not about having no problems, but about not letting problems steal your focus. When you choose silence, you stop feeding chaos with attention. You let time and consistency speak for you. You begin to understand that your value isn't determined by how much you say, but by what you build while saying nothing. There's another layer to this. Silence teaches you emotional control. It's easy to react, to defend, to clap back. It's much harder to hold your ground, to let your actions speak, and to stay focused on your path while the world tries to pull you into distractions. That's what strategy is, knowing when to move, when to speak, and when to stay still. It's not about being passive, it's about being precise. You start responding instead of reacting. You choose your battles wisely. You don't waste words on people who have already made up their minds about you. Silence helps you rise above noise and judgment. When you learn to let go of the need to be understood, you free yourself. You don't owe anyone an explanation for working on your life, healing, or protecting your boundaries. The loudest people in the room are often the least secure. The ones who move quietly are usually the ones who are building something real. Your silence becomes a shield, not to hide, but to protect the power you're creating. Every moment you choose silence over reaction, you're investing in your growth. You're choosing progress over drama, discipline over distraction, and purpose over validation. You begin to trust yourself more because you no longer need anyone else to confirm your worth. Silence becomes your strength, not the kind that shouts, but the kind that endures, that builds, that transforms. And one day, when the results show, when your life begins to reflect everything you've been quietly working for, you'll look back and realize that silence was never your weakness. It was the smartest strategy you ever used. Energy flows where attention goes. That simple truth has the power to transform your entire life if you really understand it. Whatever you focus on consistently, you feed. If you focus on fear, you'll attract more reasons to be afraid. If you focus on growth, you'll find more opportunities to grow. The mind is like a magnet. It pulls in the energy of whatever dominates your attention. That's why the moment you stop chasing validation, stop trying to control what people think, and start focusing on your own progress, everything begins to shift. You start to see results not because life suddenly becomes easier, but because you've stopped scattering your energy in 100 directions. You've stopped giving power to things that don't serve you and started fueling what actually matters. Most people don't fail because they lack potential. They fail because they waste energy. They drain themselves worrying about what others are doing, comparing their journey, overthinking their next move. Every time you give attention to distractions, to negativity, to drama, you take focus away from your purpose. You can't expect to build something meaningful when your energy is constantly leaking through unimportant things. The truth is, focus is fuel. Where you place it determines how far you go. When you put all your energy into your goals, your healing, your mindset, you become unstoppable. You begin to attract people, situations, and opportunities that align with your vision because your energy starts vibrating at the frequency of your focus. Think about this. When you were a child learning to ride a bike, you didn't look at the ground because the more you looked down, the more you fell. You had to look ahead to stay balanced. Life works the same way. If you keep looking at your failures, you'll stay stuck in them. If you look ahead toward your growth, your peace, your next move, you'll naturally move in that direction. Energy doesn't understand words, it understands focus. It follows what you believe in, what you feed with your attention every single day. That's why it's so dangerous to give time and thought to things that drain you. The more attention you give to what's wrong, the more wrong things show up. The more attention you give to progress, gratitude, and growth, the more those things expand. When you decide to focus on yourself, you reclaim your energy. You stop letting people manipulate your emotions. You stop giving space to negativity. You stop apologizing for prioritizing your own well-being. It doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you start caring wisely. You realize that energy is your most valuable currency and you choose to spend it intentionally. Every thought you think, every conversation you have, every goal you chase, it's either adding to your energy or draining it. Once you start seeing your focus as an investment, you become careful about where you put it. You begin saying no more often, not out of arrogance, but out of self-respect. You start protecting your time like your life depends on it, because it does. The reason most people never reach their potential is because they're distracted. They think multitasking equals productivity, but the truth is, split focus leads to split results. When you give your energy to too many things, you water down your power. But when you give it fully to one vision, one purpose, one goal, you multiply your impact. That's how momentum builds. Energy loves direction. It grows when it has somewhere to go. And when your attention is fixed on your growth, you naturally align with the things that are meant for you. Every time you redirect your energy away from noise and back to yourself, you create movement. You start feeling lighter, more grounded, more intentional. You stop reacting and start responding. You stop chasing and start attracting, because energy doesn't chase, it attracts. When you focus on healing, you attract peace. When you focus on growth, you attract progress. When you focus on becoming the best version of yourself, you attract everything that supports that version. This is why it's so important to guard your focus like treasure. You can't afford to waste energy on what doesn't build you. Every time you complain, compare, or doubt, you're feeding the wrong thing. But when you visualize, plan, and take small, consistent steps, you're feeding your future. Energy flows where attention goes, so make sure your attention is aimed at what you want, not what you fear. Because whatever you keep focusing on, you eventually create. The power of this truth is that it puts responsibility back in your hands. You're not a victim of circumstances, you're a manager of focus. If your life feels chaotic, your energy is probably scattered. But the moment you pull it back, align it, and pour it into the things that matter, life starts to organize itself around you. That's when you realize you were never lacking motivation. You were just giving it away to the wrong things. So every day, remind yourself, my focus is my power. My attention is my direction. My energy is my creation. Where I place it determines who I become. You don't owe explanations. You owe results. The moment you stop trying to convince people to understand your path, your peace, or your purpose, you set yourself free. You realize that your growth doesn't need permission, your dreams don't need validation, and your vision doesn't need to be approved by anyone else. Too often, people waste energy explaining why they're doing what they're doing. They try to justify every choice, every boundary, every move. But the truth is, no matter how well you explain yourself, some people will never get it. They're not supposed to. It's not their vision. It's yours. The ones who are meant to understand you will see it through your consistency, not your explanations. When you start chasing results instead of approval, your mindset shifts. You begin to move differently. You stop talking about what you're going to do and you start doing it. You stop making promises you can't keep and start building evidence that you're capable. Because talk doesn't change anything. Action does. You don't need to convince anyone that you're serious about your goals when your habits already prove it. You don't need to argue about your worth when your growth speaks louder than your words ever could. People will always have opinions, but opinions don't pay your bills. Opinions don't build your dreams, and opinions don't define your future. Results do. The problem is, explaining yourself gives away your power. It keeps you trapped in the need to be understood instead of focusing on being effective. Every time you stop to justify your decisions, you interrupt your progress. You slow down your own growth to make others comfortable with it. But you can't build greatness while trying to please everyone. Growth makes people uncomfortable, not because you're doing something wrong, but because your change reminds them of their own stagnation. When you rise, you expose what others have chosen to ignore. And instead of trying to pull them up, you start feeling guilty for leaving them behind. That guilt makes you talk, makes you explain, makes you shrink. But your purpose was never meant to fit into someone else's understanding. Silence becomes your strength when you choose to focus on your results. You let your work speak for itself. You trust that consistency will do the talking. You stop defending your vision and start delivering on it. Because at the end of the day, success doesn't need to announce itself. It's undeniable. People might doubt your plans, but they can't argue with outcomes. You'll notice that the less you explain, the more powerful you become. You stop giving people space to question your intentions, and you start showing them what's possible through your persistence. Every successful person learns this truth early on. Results demand discipline, not dialogue. The more time you spend explaining, the less time you spend executing. The energy you pour into trying to make people believe in you could be used to make progress that speaks for you. When you focus on doing rather than telling, your results eventually silence the noise. You don't have to defend your decisions when your success becomes undeniable proof of your direction. It's not arrogance, it's alignment. You're simply choosing to protect your focus. The world is loud and everyone has an opinion, but the loudest voice in your life should be your purpose. Your time is too valuable to waste convincing people who are committed to misunderstanding you. So you keep your head down, you stay consistent, and you let your results build your reputation. Because when you produce results, explanations become unnecessary. People begin to notice, even the ones who doubted you. They start asking how you did it, and that's when your silence speaks the loudest. You'll find peace in realizing that not everyone needs to understand your process. Some people will misjudge your silence. Others will misread your distance. That's okay. Your job isn't to fix their perception. Your job is to follow your purpose. You don't owe anyone a breakdown of your healing, your progress, or your boundaries. The only thing you owe yourself is commitment. The only thing you owe the world is results. Every step you take in silence, every hour you spend working while others are talking, every decision you make that aligns with your goals, That's your explanation. That's your story being written without words. And when your results finally appear, when your life begins to reflect the work you've been putting in, you won't need to say a thing. The people who questioned you will understand. The people who doubted you will watch. The people who believed in you will celebrate. And you'll stand there knowing that every moment of silence was worth it. Because in the end, explanations fade, opinions change, but results last forever. Transformation happens in private. The most powerful changes you'll ever experience won't happen in front of people. They'll happen in the moments no one sees. Real transformation doesn't need an audience. It needs commitment. It happens when you're sitting alone with your thoughts, when you're breaking old habits, when you're facing uncomfortable truths about yourself. It happens when you decide that your growth matters more than being understood, that your peace matters more than being seen, and that your future matters more than your past. The world glorifies visibility, but the truth is, growth rarely looks glamorous. It's quiet, it's messy, it's uncomfortable, and it's almost always invisible. You don't post about transformation, you live it. You don't announce healing, you do the work that nobody claps for. You don't need to prove that you're evolving because the evidence will show in your energy, your mindset, and your decisions. Transformation is a process that demands privacy because it requires focus, honesty, and discipline, things that can't survive constant validation seeking. When you're truly changing, you stop caring about what people think of you and start caring about who you're becoming. You realize that the version of you you're building can't exist in the same environment that broke you, so you pull back, you isolate, you start spending time with yourself, and that solitude begins to shape you into someone stronger. People often mistake your distance for arrogance or coldness, but what they don't understand is that private growth requires separation. You can't evolve while surrounded by noise. You can't heal while you're constantly explaining your pain. You can't rebuild your mindset while entertaining opinions that contradict your purpose. So you go silent. You start saying no more often. You stop attending every conversation, every argument, every invitation. You start choosing your peace over people-pleasing. That's when transformation begins. Not in the spotlight, but in the stillness. The quiet seasons of your life are the most important ones because that's where the foundation is built. When no one is cheering, when no one is noticing, when you're unsure if your effort even matters, that's where character is formed. Transformation demands that you do the hard things when no one is watching. Waking up early, staying consistent, showing up for yourself, letting go of people and patterns that drain you. It's in those silent moments that you find your real strength. The world might not see it yet, but the person you're becoming is being shaped through that discipline. Privacy also protects your process. When you share too soon, you expose your growth to judgment. You invite energy that can distract or discourage you. Not everyone is meant to understand your journey, and not everyone deserves access to it. Some people want to see you growing just enough to feel superior, not enough to surpass them. That's why protecting your transformation means keeping it sacred. You work quietly, you plan privately, you build in silence. Because when you keep your growth between you and your purpose, it stays pure. It's not about hiding, it's about protecting what's becoming powerful. The irony of transformation is that people will only see the results, never the process. They'll think it happened overnight, that you suddenly became confident, peaceful, successful. They won't see the nights you cried, the mornings you doubted yourself, the sacrifices you made. They won't see the discipline, the healing, the self-control it took to become who you are. And that's fine, because you didn't do it for applause. You did it because you were tired of staying the same. You did it because you wanted more for yourself. Transformation isn't supposed to be broadcasted, it's supposed to be experienced. Every private decision to stay disciplined when you could quit, every choice to heal instead of hate, every moment you choose growth over comfort, that's transformation. It's slow, it's painful, but it's real. And one day, without realizing it, you'll look at yourself and see how far you've come. You'll realize that the version of you that once struggled to let go has learned peace. The one who used to doubt has learned faith. The one who used to need approval now moves in silence. That's what true transformation looks like. It's internal before it's external. When the world finally sees the results, they'll think you changed suddenly, But you'll know it wasn't sudden, it was sacred. It was the countless private moments where you chose discipline over distraction, growth over gossip, and peace over proving. That's why transformation happens in private, because it requires you to meet yourself in truth, to face your flaws without filters, to evolve without applause. So when everything finally aligns, when your life starts reflecting the work you've been quietly doing, you won't need to explain it. You'll just live it. Because transformation never needed validation. It only ever needed your commitment. When you focus on yourself, everything aligns. The moment you stop trying to control what's outside of you and start mastering what's within you, life begins to shift. Things that once felt chaotic start to make sense. People who no longer fit your energy naturally fade away, and opportunities that match your purpose begin to appear. It's not magic, it's alignment. When your focus is internal, your external world begins to mirror your growth. You stop chasing things that aren't meant for you, and you start attracting what truly belongs to you. The energy you once wasted trying to fix everyone else gets redirected into building yourself, and that's when everything begins to fall into place. Most people live their lives looking outward, trying to change people, impress others, or control circumstances. But that approach only creates frustration because you can't force alignment from the outside in. It always starts from the inside out. The moment you decide to focus on your growth, your peace, and your purpose, you raise your frequency. You begin to attract things that reflect your new level of awareness. Relationships improve or dissolve based on whether they match your energy. Goals become clearer because your mind is no longer cluttered with distractions. You start feeling guided instead of lost because you're finally tuned into yourself instead of the noise around you. Focusing on yourself isn't selfish. It's essential. It means you finally recognize that you are the foundation of your own life. When the foundation is strong, everything built on it stands firm. But when you neglect yourself, your boundaries, your mental health, your growth, you end up creating a life that constantly collapses under pressure. Alignment means taking responsibility for your energy. It means understanding that you attract what you are ready for. If you're unhealed, you attract chaos. If you're grounded, you attract peace. That's why focusing on yourself changes everything. It shifts the energy you bring into the world, and that shift is what realigns your life. When you begin this process, it might feel lonely. You'll notice people pulling away. You'll feel detached from old habits, old places, old conversations. But that's not loss, it's alignment. The universe is rearranging your surroundings to match your new vibration. The silence, the isolation, the discomfort, they're all part of the process. You're not being punished, you're being positioned. When you stay focused on your path, the right people, opportunities, and experiences will begin to show up effortlessly because your energy has become a magnet for what's meant for you. Focusing on yourself also means learning to trust timing. Alignment isn't about getting everything immediately. It's about trusting that things are unfolding exactly when they're supposed to. The impatience fades once you realize that everything you want is on its way, but it requires you to stay steady. When you keep working on yourself, even when no one notices, you're preparing for alignment. You can't attract peace while you're chaotic inside, and you can't attract clarity while your mind is filled with doubt. The more disciplined you become with your thoughts and actions, the more naturally your life begins to align with your vision. Every day you focus on yourself, you're telling the universe you're ready. Ready for better, ready for more, ready for peace. And the universe responds by aligning circumstances to support that readiness. The opportunities you used to chase will start finding you. The relationships you used to fight for will be replaced with ones that flow naturally. The goals that once felt impossible will begin to unfold with ease, not because life became perfect, but because you did the work to align your mind, energy, and focus. It's easy to mistake alignment for luck, but it's not luck. It's intention. You create alignment through consistency, self-awareness, and courage. You stop settling for things that drain you. You stop saying yes to what doesn't serve you. You stop forcing connections and start nurturing your own peace. That's how alignment works. The more you become true to yourself, the more everything around you starts to make sense. One day you'll look back and realize that everything you once worried about eventually worked itself out. Not because you controlled it, but because you controlled yourself. You chose to focus on your growth, your healing, and your vision, and that inner shift changed the outer world. That's what alignment truly is, a reflection of inner balance manifesting as outer peace. So keep focusing on yourself, even when it feels lonely, even when it's quiet, even when it seems like nothing's happening, because something is happening. You're aligning, you're becoming who you were meant to be, and when that happens, everything around you naturally falls into place.